All right, lean in, because this story gets uncomfortable fast. Everybody got a reason, and for a lot of folks, that reason got a title: My Parents. It starts innocent, a missed opportunity, a bad habit, a fear that won't let go. And somewhere in the explanation, the past walks in like it owns the place. If they didn't, if I was raised different, that's how I grew up. And listen, sometimes that's true. But here's where it gets dangerous, when the explanation becomes a permanent excuse. Here's the thriller twist. Blame feels like insight, but it often functions like anesthesia. It numbs responsibility. See, blaming parents does something powerful in the mind. It answers the question, why am I like this? Without forcing you to answer the harder one, what am I going to do about it? That's why the habit sticks. Blame is emotionally efficient. It organizes pain. It gives chaos a storyline. It says, this didn't come from nowhere, and that's comforting. Psychologically, blame serves three functions. First, it protects the self. If the damage came from outside you, then maybe you're not broken, you're just injured. That distinction matters to the ego. Second, it preserves identity. Changing means admitting parts of you are outdated. Blame lets you keep the same identity while explaining the struggle. No rewiring required. Third, it delays grief. Because once you stop blaming, you have to accept something brutal. The past isn't coming back to fix itself. And that grief, that's heavy. So the mind does a trade, short-term relief for long-term stagnation. That's why the blame survives into adulthood. Not because people are childish, but because responsibility is scarier than resentment. Responsibility says, even if it wasn't my fault, it's still my move. And that's a lonely place to stand. Here's the dark irony. Blame keeps people emotionally tied to the very thing they say harmed them. The past stays in the driver's seat, rent-free. Now let's get practical. Moving from blame to change doesn't mean denying harm. It means changing the function of the story. Step 1. Separate cause from control. Yes, something shaped you. No, it doesn't get to decide who you stay. Both can be true. Step 2. Stop asking, who did this to me? Start asking, what skill did I not learn? Because skills can be built. Victimhood can't. Step 3. Grieve what you didn't get. Not dramatically, not publicly, honestly. Because ungrieved loss turns into lifelong blame. Step 4. Rewrite the identity. Not, I am this way because of my past, but I'm becoming this way because of my choices. That shift is quiet, but it's lethal to excuses. Here's the conclusion most people don't like. Blame isn't about parents, it's about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and who we let keep it. The moment blame stops being useful, it feels empty. And in that emptiness, you finally get your hands back on the wheel. The past may explain you, but it doesn't get to own you. That's the psychological trick. And once you see it, blame stops feeling like truth and starts feeling like a cage you forgot you could open. All right, stay with me a little longer this time, because this conversation don't live in extremes. It lives in the gray, and the gray is where most people get stuck. Blame gets a bad reputation, but let's be honest, sometimes blame is earned. Sometimes damage didn't come from nowhere. Sometimes neglect wasn't imagined. Sometimes harm wasn't misunderstood. And pretending otherwise, that's another kind of lie. Here's the thing nobody says out loud. Some parents failed their responsibilities, not emotionally, not symbolically, practically. They didn't protect, they didn't guide, they didn't prepare, and that leaves marks, deep ones.
When a child grows up in chaos, silence, or constant fear, their nervous system doesn't forget just because the calendar moves forward. So yes, some struggles are rooted in upbringing. Some patterns were installed early. Some wounds were handed down before language existed. That part is real. And skipping past it does more harm than good. Here's where the psychology gets complicated. Blame, in those cases, starts as truth-telling. It names what happened. It validates pain. It says, "I wasn't crazy." And that matters, because unacknowledged harm doesn't disappear. It mutates. But here's the pivot. Truth-telling is supposed to be a phase, not a permanent residence. And that's where things go sideways. What begins as recognition quietly turns into identity. I am this way because of them. And suddenly, the past isn't just explanatory, it's authoritative. The psychological function shifts. At first, blame protects the inner child. Later, it protects the adult from risk. Because if the damage was done to you, then maybe healing requires something external too, something that never comes. Here's the uncomfortable middle ground. Some parents deserve accountability, but accountability doesn't automatically mean lifelong control. Those are two different things. Blame stays into adulthood because it serves a second purpose. It gives pain a target. Pain without a target turns inward. Pain with a target feels manageable. So the mind keeps pointing backward, even when the threat is gone. And there's another layer nobody likes talking about. Blame can also become moral leverage. It creates an invisible contract. I was wronged, therefore I'm exempt from certain expectations. Not consciously, not maliciously, psychologically. That exemption feels fair until years pass and growth stalls. Now here's the perspective shift that actually frees people. Blame answers, "Why did this happen?" But responsibility answers, "What now?" Both questions matter, but only one moves time forward. And no, moving forward doesn't mean forgiveness. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean minimizing harm. It means reclaiming authorship. Practical shift number 1. Stop arguing with the past. You don't need it to admit fault again. You already know what happened. The repetition isn't healing anymore. It's looping. Shift number 2. Translate blame into specific deficits. Not, "They ruined me," but, "I wasn't taught emotional regulation. I didn't learn boundaries. I didn't model consistency." Those are solvable problems. Vague blame isn't. Shift number 3. Let grief finish its sentence. A lot of blame is unfinished mourning. Mourning the parent you needed, the safety you didn't get, the version of yourself that never had a chance. Grief acknowledged becomes wisdom. Grief avoided becomes resentment. Shift number 4. Choose a new authority. Not your parents, not the past, you. Even if they broke something, only you can rebuild it. That part isn't fair, but it is real. Here's the final truth. Blame isn't wrong, it's incomplete. It's the first chapter, not the ending. Some parents should be blamed for real, for neglect, for harm, for absence. But letting that blame run your adult life, that hands them a power they no longer deserve. The goal isn't to deny the past. The goal is to stop living in it. Because healing doesn't start when the blame disappears. It starts when blame stops being the loudest voice in the room. And in that quiet, you don't erase what happened. You just finally decide. It doesn't get the final word anymore.